Are you interested in learning how to make time-lapse videos like these? In this episode, we're going to look at the tools and techniques to make these interesting videos. Hi, I'm Jeff. I'm a visual artist, photographer, and videographer, and I've been shooting time lapses for the last several years. I'm currently working on a year-long project that's targeted at film festivals. I'm going to show you some of the things that I've learned along the way. Quick disclaimer, I did work at a camera store. I left that industry about 5 years ago, but I did work for one for about 6 years. And some of the equipment that we're going to reference in this video, I may have gotten at a discount. I am not brand loyal. I would gladly own every camera on the market if I had the funds. So hopefully that doesn't make me too biased, but just so you know, I did get some of this gear at a discount. Time-lapse videos can be a lot of fun. They grab our attention by showing us things at a speed that we're not used to seeing them at. They can be interesting on their own, and they're also very useful when incorporated into other kinds of video. Okay, the first thing we're going to talk about is equipment. Obviously, to capture a time-lapse video, you're going to need some kind of camera. For taking time lapses, you can use something as simple as a phone or as complicated as a cinema camera. I generally use either a DSLR or a mirrorless camera to capture mine. There are benefits to using a cell phone. Most of them have everything from the camera to the software that you need to process the eventual video that you create. But there are downsides as well. The biggest downside that I see is that you can't really change lenses, adding filters can be a challenge, and sometimes the video output just isn't as high quality as I'd like it to be. Mirrorless cameras are my current favorite. I like them because I can change lenses, adding external filters is really easy, and I can capture high-res, high-quality stills that I can incorporate into my videos. Many cinema cameras can shoot time lapses as well. I tend not to use my cinema camera for time lapses because I prefer the flexibility of capturing higher resolution stills and the latitude that that gives me in post. Now, once you have your camera figured out, you're going to have to figure out how you're going to hold it up off the ground. And the easiest way to do that is a tripod. Though I've used stacks of books and countertops and other things as well. Generally, using a tripod gives you a lot more flexibility. They don't necessarily have to be fancy depending on what it is that you're shooting. I've used everything from tabletop tripods to big cinema rigs and everything in between. My most used tripods are probably travel tripods because they're light and easy to carry, though if you're out in a high wind, a heavier tripod will help avoid shakes. You're also going to need an intervalometer. A lot of cameras and phones have that feature built into the software, but if yours does not, and if your camera has an external trigger port, you can use an external intervalometer. These are cheap. I bought mine online, and it came with cables for every camera that I own, which was really nice. And they're pretty straightforward to use. Another thing to consider is your memory card. You're going to be taking hundreds, maybe thousands of photos per time lapse. So something with a lot of capacity is a smart investment. And when I'm shooting in bright light, I like to use neutral density filters to allow me to control the shutter speed just a little bit. Basically, they're sunglasses for your camera, and they allow you to use slower shutter speeds even in bright light. Now we need to consider lenses. For most of my nature work, I use wide-angle lenses because they can capture a lot of sky and ground at the same time. But depending on the subject, I also use normal lenses and telephoto lenses as well. What you're trying to capture and how close you can get will really dictate what kind of lens you need. I prefer lenses that have manual aperture control because I think it reduces flicker in post in a lot of situations. And the final thing gear-wise to consider is how you're going to power your camera. For most of my time lapses, I use the internal battery that came with my camera, and I carry a few spares. But some cameras can use external power pack or even use a dummy battery that will allow you to plug into the wall and power your camera indefinitely. Now we can move on to technique. The first thing you need to decide is what are you going to capture? For time lapses to be interesting, something needs to be moving or we won't get the sense that we've accelerated time. Things like people walking, cars driving past, stars or clouds going overhead, all of those things make really interesting subject matter. And really, as long as something's moving, the sky's the limit. The next thing you need to do is select what interval you're going to shoot at, and that's the amount of time between shots. The longer the interval you select, the faster subjects are going to move in the end video. Here's an example I shot of a wristwatch, shot at 3 separate intervals. We start with a 2-second, then move to a 4-second, and then finally a 6-second interval, and you can see how the watch moves faster and faster as the interval changes. When I'm shooting something like landscape with clouds moving overhead, I usually start with a 2 to 3 second interval. Something like astrophotography could have maybe a 30-second interval. construction or things that progress very slowly might have a minute or more between individual shots. So you kind of have to get a feel for what it is that you're going to shoot. Experimentation will guide you into how to set up your intervals. I like to extend the shutter speed a little bit, especially when I'm shooting in bright light, by using ND filters. At a bare minimum, I want to shoot at 1 over whatever double the frame rate of the eventual product that I'm going to render is. So if I'm shooting a 24p video, I want to shoot it around 1 over 50 or 1 over 48 if your camera allows that of a shutter speed, and that'll give you a nice smooth video. Frequently, I'll even go longer to smooth things out even further. I've used a full second or more shutter speed at times to show smooth motion. And finally, when I'm shooting time-lapse videos, I always shoot them in manual focus, so if something moves through the frame in front of your subject, it doesn't cause the focus to shift. Once you've decided what you want to capture, you need to set up your intervalometer. I'm going to walk you through my setup, but your camera may be slightly different. So I'm going to set this at 500 shots, which yields about 20 seconds of footage at 24 frames a second. A 5-second delay at the start allows any wobbling from hitting the shutter button to stop before you start recording. And a 2-second interval is what I want for this project. Now it's time to go out and shoot your time-lapse. Make sure you check your exposure and focus, set up your intervalometer, and start recording. When you get home, transfer your images into their own folder, and in just a minute, I'll show you how to edit those into a time-lapse. And the last thing we need to do is to assemble the video. Some cameras and phones will do that for you. Some of them don't give you an option. The only way they're going to output what you've shot is as a video. I prefer to edit photos in post because I have a little more latitude. I can change crops. I can change what part of the frame that I choose to hold on to. I can change resolutions in post. So for all of those reasons, I prefer to edit individual photos back into video. There's a lot of tools that you can use. DaVinci Resolve is a free editor. As a matter of fact, it's one that I use to edit these videos. And Photoshop is another good option, and I'm going to walk you through editing these down in Photoshop into a video. First, we need to open Bridge and go to the folder with your photos. Select one of the photos and then hit Control-A on a PC or Command-A on a Mac to select all of the photos. Next, right-click and choose Open in Camera Raw. In Camera Raw, choose a photo. I usually pick the brightest one if there is a lot of variation in the light. This day was pretty even, so I'm just going to pick the first. Now we make any adjustments we want to the image. I'm increasing the exposure under the light section. Then saturation under color. Under effects, I add a little texture and dehaze. I think that looks good. So back to the thumbnail of the photo, hit Command or Control-A to select all files, then right-click and select Sync Settings. The defaults are fine for this, so click the OK button, and your changes will be applied to all of the files. Next, on the upper right, click in the box with the downward arrow to convert and save the images. Select the destination folder you want to save to. I like to create a subfolder titled JPEGs for this. Then click Create, then click Select. Select a title for the files. In the window to the right, make sure to select 6-digit serial number and enter 5 zeros and a 1 for the starting number. I use JPEG as the format and set the quality to 12. Then click on Save. As the files are converted, you can see the progress in the lower left corner. To save time, I cut some of that conversion out. When the conversion is done, click Done in the bottom right corner. Close Bridge, and next we'll open Photoshop. In Photoshop, from the File menu, click Open. Navigate to the folder we created earlier. Select the lowest numbered file. Next, click the checkbox titled Image Sequence, so Photoshop knows that we are editing a time-lapse. Then click Open. Choose a frame rate. I selected 24 for mine, but any of the standard frame rates in the drop-down window are fine. Then click OK. Open the Crop tool by hitting C on the keyboard. I chose a 16:9 crop to render a standard aspect ratio for TV. Adjust the crop and framing to your liking. I adjusted my horizon a little bit to fix the shots being slightly off during capture. When you're happy, click the check mark in the upper right to commit the crop. Click Convert in the pop-up box. Now we'll fix the resolution in the image menu, clicking on image size. I'm exporting in HD, so I set the width to 1920. Since the settings are linked and we already set the aspect ratio, the width will change automatically to 1080, then click OK. To render the video, click the menu bars in the lower right. If your timeline isn't showing, turn it on in the Windows menu by clicking Timeline. Now click the menu bars and select Render Video. Give your video a title. Select a folder or make note of where it's currently set to go. High quality H.264 is fine. The resolution and frame rate should match what you had set earlier. Then click Render. A progress bar will appear. When it's finished, your video will be in the folder that you chose in the render menu. I'm just going to trim the rest of this for time and we'll look at the end result. I really like how this time lapse turned out. Usually I prefer more clouds in the sky, but having all the ducks and geese on the surface of the lake really added some interest. If you found this tutorial helpful, please like and subscribe. I make videos on art techniques and tools, photo and video techniques and tools, and some motivational content as well as guidance for artists and creatives. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.